There are over 300 women in Britain's largest prison for women, Holloway.
I can tell you what it was like without thinking. I got to the gate and then I knew that this was it. And as those gates closed behind me, I knew I couldn't get out. Then an officer comes, she unlocks the door, you hear the keys swinging, ringing, everything. That's the worst part of it, really.
Morning, Edith.
Well, I had my pride and dignity. I felt myself as a woman. I mean, I'd never let that be taken away from me. I mean, just because other girls in there let themselves go, doesn't mean to say all the girls have got to be the same. It was just me. I've always had that about myself. Pride and dignity is something in a woman's life. I try to keep it. I mean, obviously, I use makeup and that about myself now, so you've got to try and do something to have the worldly touch about you.
You're all put in together. You're all together. Prostitute, drunk, drug addict. You're all together.
I think the thing that you think about most is the dirt and the smell of the place. There's always that horrible damp smell, you know, about the place. And all you see is the different tiers of the different landings and all the cell doors. You hear the jangle of keys, and it seems to be hollower in a closed prison, you know, because it vibrates all the way through. All you see is whitewash in your cell, and you sit there, and all the things seem to be so big, you know. Troubles seem to multiply, and it just gets on top of you.
I don't know how to face the world. I don't know what I'm going to think when I go outside the gates. I don't know, I feel so cheap, you know. Yes, I think you are cheap when you come in a place like this. It hurts you really deep. You have a long time to think when you're inside here. What will people ever, will they ever trust you again when you go on the outside of the world? I don't know. Beyond them gates, what lies beyond them gates?
Well, I think most of them are really inadequate, rather unable to stand the stresses and strains of normal life, and they don't know how to cope. I don't think many of them really mean to live by crime. Just when they get into a muddle, they always take the wrong, feeble, weak way out. And I think that a great many of them, of course, they're mentally unstable. I don't mean that they're ill exactly mentally, but they very little self-control, and they go off the deep end rather too quickly. And I would think that it's really sort of inadequacy of personality that they have in common.
Over 1/2 of all convictions for women are for larceny, usually for relatively small acts of theft. Hire purchase offences and shoplifting are very common. Both have been described as domestic disasters.
Well, I blame the shortage of money. When you have a child, I mean, I get £7 when I'm on the outside from the national assistance. I pay £3.5 rent, 10 shilling for coal, 10 shilling for gas, which leaves me about £3 to live on. Then out of the £3 I have to feed and clothe my son and myself, which is impossible. I mean, I can't give my boy fancy food. I mean, we just have what we can have. One day it may be bread and butter, another day it may be stew, anything that I can afford. I realise this, that the money shortage is most of the shoplifting business, mostly. Because if you had enough money, you wouldn't have to do it. But it's just one of these things that can't be helped. I mean, when my little boy asks me for anything, I have to give him, if it's bread and butter, I have to give him bread and butter. If I can give him bread and jam, I give him bread and jam. I mean, my babies know what it is to be hungry.
Right, now do you think that really is a cheap menu for a day? Would you all really be able to manage that, bearing in mind that you have 6 other days to spread your money over? And it doesn't only mean food, you have other things to do with it, of course.
It is a bit green.
It is, yeah.
It's expensive, isn't it?
It is.
Think of it if you have children. Bacon now, Selina, you said bacon.
Yes.
What sort of bacon would you buy?
Well, like smoked bacon.
You smoked bacon. Any particular part?
No, not really. Like,
Roughly how much would you pay for the bacon that you buy, a pound?
about 1/6.
1/6. So you buy the cheap pieces of
Yes.
sticky bacon?
Cheapish, yes.
Cheapest, yes. Well, that wouldn't be so bad. But you said bacon and egg
Yes.
for breakfast. Well, suppose you had 6 children, for instance, and some of you very well may have. There are times when the eggs are quite expensive. They may be cheap just at the moment. But
I could have scrambled eggs for children.
Yes, that would be a good idea, but scrambled egg on toast would be
Yes.
perhaps a better one, because you could then divide the eggs so that each child would have about half an egg.
Yes, that would be
Somehow we've got to help them so that they achieve stability. Of course, you can do this to some extent by training, like teaching them more about budgeting and cooking and care of children.
Upwards, please.
Many of them need physical help. They are below par physically, and the doctors can make them much better in health while they're here, so that they go out better able to cope with their problems. I think a great many of the women here are really basically very lonely. And this, curiously enough, may be even with a husband and a lot of children, that nobody really takes much interest in them as people.
First music in our show this morning from the Alan Moore 4, featuring Vic Flick on guitar, that's his real name, with Geronimo.
My husband is a principal officer at Pentonville Prison, and I'm a principal officer at Holloway Prison. I would write something a bit, Lena, but still you've done that.
Well, you can always do it, yeah.
I started group counselling 3 years ago. After 2 years, I felt that there needed to be something else, that it wasn't any good trying to solve domestic problems with the wives when the husbands weren't present. So we decided to start a husband and wives group with husbands living locally in London. What shall we have for lunch tomorrow? Are we going out?
No, I'll have in bed.
You lazy thing. You know, it's ages since we had a Sunday out in the town.
I found that since joining with Margaret in this group work, that our own life has become a lot better, because now we talk about things quite openly and honestly that I would have kept to myself even only 2 years ago. Right, that's for me. Butter?
Yes, please. Yes. Half a pound of tea. Shall I have some gammon? Grilled gammon. These women seem to feel that we, as in charge of them, are perfectionists. What we try to make them understand is that we're not. Our marriage has flaws, just the same as their marriages have. We have misunderstandings too, but we manage to overcome these through talking them out and being reasonable.
There's another aspect of it, that when you're in prison we sort of just see them all as faces which have numbers attached to them. But once you get to this pattern of sitting in groups and being perfectly honest, you see them as a separate person with a separate problem in their separate life.
What we discovered was that the root of the problem seemed to be lack of communication. A woman would get into difficulties and she just couldn't sit down and tell her husband. So she got into worse difficulties. This is why most of them had arrived in prison.
This is Stile. Though it looks like an open prison, it is in fact a semi-secure prison. It holds 180 women.
Good morning, Miss Cowden. Thank you very much. That seems very nice to you, doesn't it? Good morning, Mary. Good morning. What's for dinner today?
Braised roll lamb.
Very nice.
Forested potato.
Very nice too. Vegetable? What's for vegetable?
Buttered cabbage, madam.
Yes, I see. Good.
And I'm making gravy. It isn't on the menu, but I'm making onion gravy.
Oh, that will add taste to it, won't it? And what's for sweet?
Bread and butter pudding and custard.
When did you make that?
I made it yesterday, madam.
It takes a long time, doesn't it?
Yes, madam.
Is that because it's a brown pudding, or?
Because it's a dark pudding, you have to keep it on a long time.
I see. What, about 9 hours or something like that?
Yes, round about that.
Well, ready for lunch then, will it?
Yes.
Are you having custard with it?
Yes, madam.
Good. That all smells very tasty, Betty.
Good morning, madam.
Yes, Mr. McCartney, everything seems to be going on all right.
Thank you very much,
Yes,
madam.
George, you enjoy being here?
Yes, thank you, madam. Yes.
You're just relieving in this.
I'm relieving, yes. Everything's going very nicely. Thank you. Yes, thank you, madam.
Good morning.
Good morning, madam.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you.
This is fairly coming on, isn't it? Morning, Mr. Lufcombe. Morning, madam. It's very nice indeed. You're beginning to see the rewards of your labours, aren't you?
Yes, ma'am.
You're enjoying it?
Lovely.
This is the weather, isn't it?
Gorgeous.
Good morning to you, then.
Good morning.
In this prison, of course, you have them in small houses of 16, 15, 16, 20. And, of course, when they come into the prison like this, they immediately feel they're an individual. Oh, certainly doing a part of growing up, no doubt about that. As far as women are concerned, there are 3 open prisons. And this is a semi-secure prison and the only one of its kind. And there is only one closed prison for women. I believe ultimately there are going to be another semi-secure prison for women in the South. And so it's hoped that most women will get the opportunity of living in this kind of environment.
At the moment they're making naval admiralty, very specialised work. Well, it gets a little monotonous at times. You keep seeing grey all the time. And then when you start a different colour, you think, well, I'll start all over again.
Well, Chief, I think probably this, we could walk around all day in this weather, couldn't we? It's absolutely lovely. It's when we appreciate this place, I think, don't you?
I'm a sinner, you're a sinner, everybody's a sinner, even though it's only in a small way. But I think everybody in the world are wrongdoers.
Good morning.
There isn't anybody that can turn around and say, well, I've never done anything in my life.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, I hope it will soon go and you'll be feeling better. I'm sure you don't like just being idle, do you?
No, I don't.
No, I'm sure you don't. I think there is a very great discipline here. Today we've got 180 people in this place. You would never know it. They come and go between their houses to their work, wherever they want to go, wherever they should be going, calmly, serenely, and quietly, and just ordinarily, which is the thing we like about it, you see.
I don't think I shall ever come back again, and I think I should work all the harder to keep me out of these places, because freedom becomes very precious when you're inside, when you can't go out of the gates into the outside world.
Britain's first and only detention centre for girls is Moor Court. The average age of its detainees is only 17. The average sentence is less than 3 months, but the training is intensive.
Right arms up. Right, 1, 2, 3. 1.
What I would like to say is constructive discipline. Now, what I mean about constructive discipline, these girls have not been disciplined. They've gone about in little gangs, they've done things for kicks. They're the type who, maybe not of a broken home, but of, again, an unstable background. They feel insecure. It's to give them a jerk up, separate them from their companions who have been, they've been troubled with. It gives them time to think, and makes them appreciate home when they do go out. Well, we don't know if it's successful or not. It's much too early. We're only in the experimental stage. And of course, we can be pretty flexible in what we do.
For the large majority of convicted girls, more traditional methods are used. Borstals, For those few girls who do not respond to ordinary Borstal treatment, there is a special Borstal recall wing at Holloway. A more understanding and a more relaxed regime makes new demands, not only on the girls themselves, but on the staff.
No, you don't know what to do. What I mean is
When you were young, didn't you want everything? Could you wait till tomorrow for something that you wanted today?
I got put to bed if I asked for too much.
But you still wanted these things, didn't you?
Yes, but that is what's wrong with these, isn't it? But they don't understand it. When you say no, you get F off and all the rest of it. You've got to take it.
But don't you think they're most difficult just with those people they're fondest of?
Oh, Jean, it's all fondness about it. There's nothing fondness about it.
I hate... No, I mean, yesterday I did D1 exercise and I had a conversation with one of the girls.
While group counselling acts as therapy for the girls, group meetings aid staff to understand and to resolve the many problems they face.
What's Miss Wolcott got to say about the 20 parishes?
Come on, say it.
Just back from leave, you know.
Pardon? Well, you know, my views are mainly the same as yours.
I mean, look at that time when we were in the kitchen. The time we were in the kitchen, sending the food down from the fours. By the time it got down the flat, it wasn't a thing.
Yes, but don't you see that whilst they're here, we can probably help them to see things a little differently?
Yes, but we're giving. We're giving all the time.
But this is what we have to do, don't we?
Not all the time, should we? We shouldn't have to all the time.
Well, they've been without so much, haven't they?
Yes, but Miss Morgan, there's plenty of other people being without things in their life. But I mean, these come in here, they get clothing, they get food, they get everything they want. And yet, still, we've got to give to them just because they're inside. I don't think it's right. They should give us a bit. But as I said before, it's self, self, self with these lot, and it always will be, and there's nothing else to it. They don't respect nothing. Well, you know how I felt when I came on at first. Yeah. I thought everything was terrible. They all wanted to hang as far as I was concerned because they were just a load of rubbish.
Well, you love them just the same, don't you? You love every bone in the body.
I sometimes feel I could just, well, I don't know, I could thump them really sometimes when they do start.
You don't really mean that.
I do sometimes because they're so demanding. I want this now, and if you don't give it, you can so and so off, and that's all there's to it.
Well, what were you like at their age?
I was different because I was brought up strict.
This is a very sore point with Miss Thornton.
They expect everything. As soon as they say jump, you've got to jump right there and then. They don't just say, oh well, I'll hang on a minute, miss. Well, you've got time. If it isn't there and then, you're all the so-and-sos under the sun. But Mrs. Gossip, these aren't children.
But they are only really in mind 8 or 9, aren't they?
And she's 2 years younger than I am.
Yes, but in body, but not mind.
On average, there are only 20 girls in the Borstal Recall Wing. Around them are the 300 women who form Holloway's adult population.
At 7 o'clock you'd go in and the sun would be shining outside and you'd hear children playing over the back. And naturally when you first go in and you can see children playing in gardens, it upsets you a great deal. So you just pray and hurry up for the winter to come so that you can't see what's going on outside. When I did get into bother outside, when my husband was in a great deal of trouble with the children, then of course I got this letter and I absolutely broke my heart all day long because there was nothing I could do. I was just edged in with 4 walls around me. I just felt like a caged animal. I knew my children were perhaps being taken away that day and there was nothing I could do about it. And I went to see the governor. I booked for the governor that morning and she see me as an emergency. The governor herself was away, so I had to see Miss Wardle, the deputy governor, and she said she would see what she could do about me going on parole. Well, one of the officers told me to get ready. They thought I would go that afternoon. Come that afternoon, nothing happens. Well, I was nearly demented by tea time. I didn't know what I was doing. I went into the officer I worked with all the time in the stores, and she went upstairs and saw our chief for me, and they told me to get ready, that I would go on parole next day. What I did, I went out next day at 12 o'clock. I had to be back in by 8. And you never know what it costs to have to walk in, knock on them gates and say, please let me in. You know, I just don't know. It was just like somebody pulling both ways, you know. And on the last time I had parole, my children and my husband was in a van outside the prison gates. The children were all asleep on a mattress in the back of the van. And he said, now I've got to go back inside. And gets halfway to these gates, and I sort of turned round to look at him, and I could see him and the children sitting there, and he sort of waving me on to go back in. And I had to wait about 5 minutes for the man to open the gates, and this was 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday night. I had a visit last week. I had 2 friends from London came to see me. They stayed an hour and a half with me. We had, you know, everything, tea, biscuits, cigarettes. It was a nice feeling. I did feel human. You know, for the last hour and a half I felt so human. But it was when they left that I felt, you know, what would they be doing when they went out that evening and I'd be here. I just imagined it maybe going out somewhere dancing, you know, or cinema or something like that. How nice it would be to walk out when they walked out and leave everything, you know, behind. My little boy maybe thinks I'm in hospital, I don't know. My little boy's being punished, not me, because I'm away from him. It's always on my mind, I think to myself, is he out playing? Is he sick? Does they miss me? Going into receptions, I think, is very, very bad. You go in, you sit on your own, you absolutely break your heart, crying for a time. Then, of course, they take you down, and once again you're shut into a cell. You go to bed at night, and I used to lay and think, I'm having my tea, I wonder if the kids have got any tea. What are they having? Are they being looked after? Have they been bathed? Silly, soppy little things, you know? And then you get into bed, and I think my point was I used to think about just silly, stupid little things that my baby had said to me, you know. And I could actually hear her saying them to me, you know, and silly little things that she said to her daddy, and the way we used to play with them. All those things come back so vividly to you. It's something you just can't explain.
It's something which is hard to explain until you've experienced it, Gary. You're lost. You're completely lost to the world. You don't know what you're doing. You're trying to pick up bits and pieces.
Yes? Which one? Joe? Aye? All right then, I'll do you just next then, darling.
It's a case of knowing that you've got a job to do and knowing full well that if you weren't there, the wife would do it, therefore you've got to get on with it. But at the same time, you do find it very, very hard. I mean, there's no getting away from it.
There are no facts to tell how many women prisoners have left their families, including their husbands, outside.
Anyone see the teapot lid? I've got it, all right. All right. That's it. Up you go. Well, jump in the bubbles, have a good go.
I don't feel that anybody that suggests putting the wife away for any length of time realises what hardships are leaving behind. Because the hardship is left behind, not what's happening in there, you see. That's too obvious to me, and I feel that the only possible solution to that is if a wife does anything wrong and she has to go away, well then make it in such a way that her children are attended to a little more, and by giving something which will help them to forget that for that period of time that their mothers are.
Over 1/2 of all convictions for women are for larceny, usually for relatively small acts of theft. Hire purchase offences and shoplifting are very common. Both have been described as domestic disasters.
I think you are cheap when you come in a place like this. It hurts you really deep. You have a long time to think when you're inside here. What will people ever, will they ever trust you again when you go on the outside of the world? I don't know. Beyond them gates, what allows? Beyond them gates.